Right, here we are then in the lounge again. And those of you of a delicate disposition may want to turn off at this point. Because one of the things we've not got to be afraid of in these days is not being politically accepted or politically correct, culturally relevant. And I want to talk to you a little bit about something that, you remember I said to you how my mindsets and my viewpoints and my belief systems were changing. There are critical things that a leader has to look at. You can't sweep big questions under the carpet. And one of the big ones for me, personally, was the whole issue of homosexuality. There you are, I've said it now. So if you're of a delicate disposition, you can turn off at this point. I have no argument with how people choose to live their lives. It's absolutely immaterial to me. I love them, whether they have that leaning or not. Some of the loveliest people I've met have been homosexual. But what I wanted to know from God was, is there such a thing as a gay Christian? And again, here we come with my belief system had been that, well, how can there be, if God is other than, as we started off, holy, how can there be? He didn't answer me right away, but during the course of the summer, I waited on him to see what he was going to say about, for me, this hot potato. And what he said just melted my heart. He said, salvation is not dependent on lifestyle. He said, the only thing that is needed for salvation is to believe who my son is, what he did, how he died and rose again. So, okay. He said, but lifestyle has to do with inheritance. That's why we see so often Paul saying, such were some of you. You were this, you were that, you were the next thing. But, he says, you won't inherit if you continue in that lifestyle. So then we come to the question of what is our inheritance? Well, Jesus is our inheritance and we are his. But it's the old 30, 60, 100-fold business again. If we only give him 30-fold, 30% of our affections, the other 70% are going somewhere else. It's misplaced affection. And the whole issue of homosexuality, of course, is that we find our fulfillment, our identity, our needs met in a same-sex relationship. When God says, I want you to get your needs met in me, but it's not going to affect the fact that you're my child if you still choose to drink from another cistern. What it is going to affect is how much of Jesus is actually able to be formed in you, and therefore at the end of the day it's about rewards and the extent to which you'll reign and rule in the next life. But your salvation is not dependent on your behaviour. If it was, it would be a works gospel, and it isn't. It's the gospel of grace. It just made my heart melt because the love of God is wider than the measures of man's mind, and the heart of the eternal is most wonderfully kind. But we make his love too narrow by false limits of our own, and we magnify his strictness with a zeal he wouldn't own. That's a man called Faber, who lived in about the, 17th century. And he walked with God in a way that was quite unique, really. God is big enough for our sin, whatever it is. And if you think that you are going to be excluded because you can't get rid of a habitual sin, that's the lie of the enemy. I have young people come to me who are caught up in pornography and sexual sin and self-gratification, and they're tearing themselves inside out because they think it's going to affect their salvation. No, it isn't. Salvation is one thing, inheritance is another. You cannot lose your salvation. You cannot undo what God has done. Oh, you'll say the scriptures tell us that if we do this, we'll go back to that, and Hebrews is particularly the one. You don't understand what the word is saying. God, his kindness is beyond the measures of our mind. And this is one of the examples of how I've had to throw out teaching of years. I've also had to revise all the teaching I got about spiritual warfare. And guess what? Both of them, throwing them out, has brought me into a greater and greater freedom than I ever knew before. And greater measure of love for my fellow believers. I'm beginning to learn what it means that there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ. All comes back to that, you see, where he's put you in his Son, and his Son is in him, so that makes you double wrapped. Bit like a rather ripe cheese. You're wrapped once and you're wrapped twice to keep all the flavour in and all the smell out. You can't undo what God has done, beloved. You can change your eye colour, your hair colour, you can change your sexual organs if you like, but if you're born again, you are his for eternity. Nothing is going to change it. So you can go on your way rejoicing, can't you? And you can let everybody else off the hook who's not living up to your expectations as well, can't you? Because the love of God is wider than the measures of your mind. So be blessed and be released and go on your way rejoicing. God bless you.